I think that what has happened is particularly serious, not only because of the number of victims that it caused, but because of the indications that exist that this was triggered, I would say, in advance of the normal way to trigger these things, because there was a risk of this being discovered. Because obviously the logic of making all these devices explode is to do it as a preemptive strike before a major military operation. So, as important as the event in itself is the indication that this event confirms that there is a serious risk of a dramatic escalation in Lebanon, and everything must be done to avoid that escalation.
You just mentioned the danger of this explosion. Let me get to the other way. This is, they use civilian devices to do this attack. Would this be a very dangerous precedent for the future war, that using civilian device to have this kind of large-scale explosions? And may I ask, is there anything to do with all these things with the releasing of hostages in Gaza? Thank you.
Indeed, I think it's very important that there is an effective control of civilian objects, not to weaponize civilian objects. That should be a rule that everywhere in the world governments should be able to implement. The link of what's happening in Lebanon with what's happening in Gaza is obvious since the beginning. I mean, the Hezbollah has been very clear in saying that it has launched its operations because of what's happening in Gaza, and that it will stop when there will be a ceasefire in Gaza.
Compare it to your first day on the job. When you look in the Honorary Secretary General mirror in the morning, approaching UNGA yet again, and during one of the worst times ever for the UN, what are your feelings?
Well, it is absolutely true that the Secretary General of the United Nations has very limited power. And it's also absolutely true that he has very little capacity to mobilize financial resources. So, no power and no money. But there are two things the Secretary General of the United Nations has, and I have to say that I've been using them, and some people even criticize me to say that I'm using too much of it. One is my voice, and nobody will be able to shut it up. And second is the capacity to convene people of goodwill to address and solve problems.